All right, welcome back to the Roast It Yourself podcast, brought to you by Coffee Bean Corral and Current Crop Roasting Shop. I'm Stephen Burnett from Coffee Bean Corral in Jackson, Mississippi, and with me, as always, is Catherine Mansell, Certified Q Grader and Director of Current Crop in New Orleans, Louisiana. Catherine, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. I saw a couple of pictures that you have a few extra golden retrievers over at Coffee Bean Corral.
Yes, we do. Marshall and Tucker both came in to visit us, and they are extra only in that they don't live here anymore, and so we don't get to see them all the time. And so it's been quite a treat for us the last few days.
Nice.
But yeah, they are awesome. We love that we get to work with our dog friends. And each week we set aside about 10 minutes to field questions from home coffee roasters and professionals alike about roasting, tasting, and most importantly, enjoying coffee. Send your questions to questions@riypod.com. That's questions@riypod.com to get a nice shout out from us and, of course, to get your question answered. Our question for this episode comes from a listener, Ian, who writes, "Good morning." So how did he know? It's actually afternoon here. Ian, come on. So I've been roasting for about 6 months personally, about 50 batches, around 350 grams at a time. Must say it took about 30 batches to get proactive on Artisan rather than reactive on profiles. Very true. It's a learning slog, isn't it? Question is, roasting has an infinite choice of variables. What factors are you changing in the profile to adjust the overall note of the roast? We have time, obviously, in all three phases. We have overall temp of the bean, at drop, etc., etc. For example, roasting a Dominican Ramirez, which is a great idea, actually, you should all do that. To generate different results, what would you experiment with first? Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Ian. This is a huge question, and I like that you brought it down to a point with where would you start? Because there are just so many things that you could do to profile a coffee. So, Catherine, where would you start?
The first thing I would do is to shorten the roast. When I was really trying to figure everything out and figure out how to change up acidity, how to sweeten things up, the first advice I got was really just try to shorten up the roast in general, just to see how that changes. Savannah, one of our employees here who runs our social media, she works a lot on Artisan with the Hot Top, which is my sweetie. I love that roaster. And I asked her opinion on this, and she says, a great place to start is making the charge temp a little higher to accomplish a shorter drying and Maillard phase. By doing this, she likes to try and get the drying phase to about 3 minutes. Another thing she starts with when roasting a new bean is lowering her power and heat by 50%. 45 seconds to 1 minute before first crack on an electric roaster and 30 seconds before the first crack on a gas roaster. From there, she drops her beans as soon as it hits the development percentage that she wants. And these are just a few things that she does in the beginning of roasting a new bean. I find that beans from the same region will often roast similarly, so I make sure to save the profile and add it to my background in Artisan when roasting a bean from the same region. You may find that you enjoy all your beans roasted this way. It tends to yield a pretty sweet cup.
No, I like that, and I think that advice, this is something we've always said, is record your roasts.
Right.
And, it's easy to say that. It's another thing to talk about how do you apply when you've recorded your roast, because it's easy to wind up with a notebook full of roasts or, a bunch of files on your computer. But if you don't use them and reference them and actually learn from the data there, go back into those notes. How did you like that coffee? I'm the worst about this because I will just record it and then never look at it again. And what is the point of that? I've learned nothing, I've gained nothing by doing that. So I've made myself go back and evaluate the coffee that resulted from that roast to kind of see, hey, what did I like out of this? What did I not like? And what could have been better? I'm going to mess things up a little bit because, or offer a dissenting opinion, which is that the middle section of the roast between dry and first crack, I really feel like if when you make that longer, when you stretch that out, you get more flavor development in my experience. If you rush through it, I don't think you get that kind of the flavor out of it. And this is, I think, seen best in my very first attempts at roasting on the fresh roast. Looked up nothing, and didn't watch a YouTube video. I just like, sweet, click, add to cart, buy.
Right.
I'm gonna start roasting coffee. And I think my first roast was like 3.5 minutes, done, start to finish. Like I cranked it up. And I was like, this is amazing. I'm so time efficient. I can roast like a quarter of a pound of coffee in 3 minutes. Wow. And I waited a couple of days like you're supposed to, and it tasted like hay or grass, and it was terrible and green and didn't taste like coffee.
Yeah.
But I hit the color I wanted, and I did go through first crack. I just rushed the whole process.
Yeah.
And so shortening the roast, I think, is a good piece of advice if your roast is too long. And if, what I gleaned from the question was he's probably using a drum roaster, which is more apt to these longer roasts, right?
Yeah.
These little fresh roast units that we play with and we roast with tend to, you can err on the other side and go way too fast,
Yeah.
But I think, to my mind, the main takeaway is you're adjusting the time in each phase. That's the number one thing that you can do to do all this. And honestly, Ian's totally right. There are about 1 million different variables, including how the coffee is stored, how old the coffee is, the altitude, the density, all those kind of things. It is. I need to talk about how we check bean density at some point, because it's pretty cool. We'll do that in a future one. But yeah, there's so many variables, so many things. But the amount of time in the phase, and my number one is the amount of time before I get first crack. If my drying phase is pretty set and standard, then how long am I in that Maillard before I start popping?
Yeah.
And play with that.
Sure.
So,
I had a question. So when you are tracking your development, do you have a specific percentage that works best for each roast level, or do you kind of keep it within 15 to 20% all the time, or does that adjust with your roast levels?
I find that I usually wind up in the 15 to 20, and I know kind of the rule of thumb is 20%. That's like the standard. But I'm one of these, I find that there's so many different sliders that when I adjust this one goes down. Like when I'm trying to roast coffee, if I target one outcome, like the one that dogged me for years was the rate of rise must always decrease, like Scott Rowell's rule. And in the air roaster that I learned on and used primarily, that's impossible. You can't do it. And so there are all these things that are helpful. There are helpful rules of thumb. But yeah, that's one. I feel like if you can achieve it, great. But if you can't, that doesn't mean you're going to have bad coffee.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I may have lost your question, but it is something that I don't. Oh yeah, I don't have a target. I just usually find out that I wind up in that range when I'm roasting. So, for what it's worth. But there's just so many things. So yeah, Ian, this is I think I like the way you're doing this. I like that you're keeping these records and that you have a roast count. I don't have a roast count. I have no idea how many roasts I've done, and I couldn't even ballpark it for you. So that's really helpful. And I think coming at coffee roasting with a meticulous a meticulous personality and a desire to keep these kind of records is going to be helpful. I would just encourage you also to listen to the coffee. Make sure that your smell. This is for everybody. Make sure that you're getting the sight, sound, and smell as best you can on your roaster, because that's the coffee speaking to you. Your probes can lie. The coffee doesn't lie. So that's what I would say to that. Yeah. But like I said, this is a massive question. So Catherine, is it possible that we left something out of this question, this answer?
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think we did. One day we'll learn enough to answer them all in 10 minutes. But everything we left out is it's all lost. It's all lost if you don't get in the comments and fill us in and tell us exactly what we missed and give advice to the people that are listening to this or watching this on YouTube, because that's the only way we grow. That's the only way we make this better for everybody. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. And if you did, please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you're listening to the podcast. Comment on YouTube, like us, share us, subscribe to us, all of the things that make the internet run these days. We could not do this without our audio video wizard, Josh Santmeyer, and our graphic designer, Tavian Walker. You guys are both amazing. You do so much work to make this happen, and we appreciate you. Remember, listener, send your question if you have anything that you want to know about coffee, roasting, tasting, or enjoying. Please send that to questions@riypod.com. And other than that, have a wonderful day and happy roasting.
Thanks, y'all.